recording part 8, week 8, 795, part 2 to the cloud. And this won't be long. It'll be a short session. I'm going to finish up part 2 of my writing kind of tips and guidelines. I'm going to give you some tips about selecting journals and avoiding those that are bad journals or corrupt and so forth. And so I'm going to give you advice on giving yourself some nourishment like cashews while you work, so you can keep motivated and keep going. So let me just share my screen. If I can go down here and find the particular one that I'm looking for, I think there we go. So how do you reward your writing? If you are productive, Paula or Yua or Hejang or Barbara, Tina, Sunmei, I don't think I'm missing. I think got all, yeah. You know, how do you reward your writing? Why don't you put down in the chat window what techniques you use to reward your writing? For me, it's a dilly bar. Now, I don't eat dilly bars all the time, but late in the day, if I've really produced something, I will reward myself with a dilly bar or a piece of chocolate of some kind. I'm curious how people reward themselves. I'll have you put in whatever it is. And so some people, you reward themselves with a stay in the spa, or getting a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. For me, it's tea. I don't drink coffee anymore. For some people, it's more sleep. I'm taking a nap. This afternoon, I took a 15-minute nap. In fact, I rewarded myself for getting things done early today. For others, it's buying something new. I have 16 pairs of shoes from running every day the past 3 years. So I think next month on March 21st, it gets to the 3-year mark. I will probably buy a pair of shoes on that day and reward myself. Now, we're not all behaviorally reinforced. Some things can be cognitive or metacognitive, but these are some behavioral things. You know, when I was in kindergarten, I loved stickers. I still love stickers. I think adults love stickers. I got stickers on the back of my laptop right here from different brew pubs I've been in Portland. Track your writing and set realistic expectations. When you meet those, you can reward yourself, or mark the days that you've met your writing goals in your calendar. If you've, as Vanessa said, she's got 3,000 whatever it is minutes working on her treadmill during the past month, or since 2023 started. So she can reward herself in different days. If you hit your writing goals, maybe you reward yourself in some way, shape, or form. But make it an enjoyable act. Cognition is effortful for all of us, but it should also be somewhat enjoyable. And it's not all cookies and cream and dilly bars, but there are moments when one gets them. Realize and say to yourself, as I said last week, rough drafts can be rough, can be anything, can be gibberish, can be totally bonk, no pun intended. Many of my, writing is just plain awful to start with, but I'm realistic, and I know that if I write enough stuff, there are golden nuggets in there somewhere. I just got to find them, rearrange them, edit them, and a couple of edits in, I can pull some things out and delete other things. So just write. And maybe you use some kind of checklist and have it next to you, and if you hit certain marks, you check it off, and once you hit all 6 items in your checklist, then you go get some lunch, or you reward yourself by sitting outside in your deck and getting some sun or whatever it is. Some people count the words. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I mean, I think sometimes if you focus so much on counting the words, it's kind of an inhibitor to start. Other times when I'm counting words, it's kind of facilitative. I say, oh, I've hit my mark. So that's not a cut and dry one. I don't recommend you always count words, but there are times which you might. I do number 9 all the time. I don't know, Sunmei probably knows this because I came in white here, in a white tie. Yesterday I came in a different white tie. I have a similar shirt. I have 3 like this, but a darker blue shirt with stripes. But I've got Hawaiian shirts in my closet. I got a couple from my daughter for Christmas. I like, in the middle of winter, wearing a Hawaiian shirt in the basement, and whatever, I could wear a Hawaiian hat or something that just gets me in a different mood. So clothes do matter. treats do matter. Just trying something different, in terms of I match up all my clothes all the time. I'm trying to make, I probably should study fashion, I go back to school. I really am interested in how people match clothes. But sometimes I just wear the weirdest stuff out there. And that can be, you got to free in your mind that way. You can just get in a total different sense of things. Just something you never wore or hadn't worn in 2 years. You pull it out of the closet and put it on, and you go down to write. You feel different. I'll guarantee you feel different. Sometimes that frees up the writing. Find those brief moments to write, like I did last week, flying back from Florida. I saw my brother I hadn't seen in 4 years. None of my brothers or sisters since before COVID. And I finally saw one of my brothers, at least. On the record, I don't like Florida. Southern Florida is too many people.
Where did you go?
Fort Myers and Sanibel Island. We saw
Okay.
all the destruction. Fort Myers is totally destroyed, but
Yeah.
Thomas Edison's house is not, and Henry Ford's house is not. But I guess the beach is destroyed. Sanibel, we saw boats on the beach, actually. It's all the trees that are down. It's kind of depressing the closer you get to the coast. But yeah, it was warm. It was 91 Friday when I left. So
Yeah, my in-laws are from the East Coast, about that far south, like just straight east of there. And I don't disagree with you.
Yeah, I could say other things, but I want to be nice to elderly people who are retiring. So I just didn't fit in down there. I don't want to play golf. I don't want to play golf any day, not alone every day, so. But I did see a crocodile or alligator, not crocodile, alligator at the very end of my last jogging. I saw one, and different animals and egrets and stuff. And so, yeah, you can find moments in a concourse, in an airport concourse, or in a cafe to write. And when you're writing, of course, you're not just writing for yourself, you're writing for potential readers. And so you're always asking who those readers would be, or what they might be interested in finding out about. What do you know that you can tell them about and inform them about, and they can take away something from it. And the more you read on a topic, the better off you're going to be. But you also run into the point of cognitive overload, as Tina pointed out, as Hejong pointed out, and as Barbara pointed out, and almost every one of you pointed out, when do I stop reading? And you can scan some things and just do surface level kinds of things, which I do all the time, and other things I have to read in depth. And you read enough stuff, you'll end up with assorted things to say about a topic. So sometimes I just look at the news as starters. Now, news is not something you cite all the time in an academic article or scholarly article, but you can cite the news. You can have that in your reference list. It's not good to have all your references being news pieces, but a couple of them can be. I don't see anyone getting rejected in terms of their dissertation or in terms of their journal article if they have a couple of things from the news media. Sometimes that's all that exists as starter fodder in your brain, those popular press pieces, but don't just rely on those things. Ask your friends to read what you've written. When you started it near the end, send it out to a couple of friends. There's nothing wrong with that, and get their feedback, except for your qualifying exam. Other than that, and who am I to say that you, well, anyways, you shouldn't on the qualifying exam. That's your work. But beyond that, everything else is collaborative, pretty much. Think a lot. You can have the computer read your paper. That's real informative. There are text-to-speech tools out there. You can also think aloud or read aloud. You'll find all sorts of errors in your thinking and in the grammar from reading it aloud. Print it out. I find that by printing it out, I find all sorts of issues that I didn't read and see on the screen. The digital versions may look really sweet, may look really beautiful, but beauty in format is not beauty in thought, right? The early problems of word processors, they have those beautiful texts. Kids don't want to revise anything. It's still true today. And so often I find that printing it out and actually looking at it, not just on the screen, and constantly think about, how do I simplify my wording? And I think both in my 511 class and 795, there's some of you that really like to have long paragraphs. Some of you really like to have long words, be impressive words. Not necessarily this class, but I've seen many students dissertating that think they have to use the longest word that they found. And that's, to be an academic, you have to find and make syntactically complex sentences. And that's fine to be syntactically complex and use good long words, but don't write 60, 70, 80 word sentences with a lot of semicolons in there and all these things. You just simplify. I find that if you have more than a paragraph on a page, break it into two, no matter what, just find a place and break it into two. And if you're more than 60 words in a sentence, find a place and stop somewhere and make it 2 or 3 sentences. It will make your text flow so much better. Because you're a specialist, you're an expert when you're doing a dissertation in a topic. And the more expert you become, the less likely someone reading it is going to have similar ability to understand what you've written, because you're alone for a moment in time as the expert in whatever it is that you're talking about. You are it. And you have to be able to distill things down to take it to just plain folks like me, the JPFs of the world. We're going to read that. We're not going to want to read a 90-word sentence or a page-and-a-half long paragraph. I read those page-and-a-half long paragraphs and I'm confused to heck. I don't know what you said. I'm just looking to get to the end of. I don't want to read it. Actually, I don't want to read page-and-a-half paragraphs. I'm fast forwarding through my brain so I don't have to look at it. And then I've missed out on what you had to say. I'm serious. I literally, what I end up doing when people are doing that kind of stuff to me, I start reading your whole dissertation in reverse, because I don't want to read that. I back up. I go to the end of the dissertation. I start reading the limitations, and then finally at the end, I'll finally read that awful long paragraph at the end. But I've read all the rest to the end, and then it's just the last paragraph I have to read. I've saved this one for the end, and maybe it has something worthwhile. But believe me, just simplify. Trade books, look at a trade book out there, what people read, the common person. They're short sentences. So revise. Use the source, use Collins. I love Collins. I love anything. Free Dictionary, Merriam-Webster's, all of them are good. Referenceware is good. It's good to throw in some different kinds of words that make sense, but just don't put it in just because it's long. Have it be purposeful insertion of words, and that will help you become a scholar within the field. Humor, you have to really be cautious about idioms and metaphors and anything political, religious, economic, any kind of commentary in your speeches, in your writing. Just avoid for the most part. Humor is okay to limit it. Humor is not okay in a dissertation, unfortunately. You can have a little bit of humor at the very end. You can probably say whatever you want in the last 2 paragraphs and have a humorous saying at the end. It might be kind of fun to end that way, but don't put them in too many, at least at the beginning. You might have one towards the beginning of a social commentary about the field and why you did your dissertation. It could be a subtle form of humor, but I would avoid the humor where possible. And the metaphors that might be American expressions that don't work real well in East Asia or Southeast Asia or Europe or other places. If you like some writing tips and advice, Inside Higher Education has Grad Hacker, the blog, insidehighered.com blogs.grad/grad hacker. And then /grad hacker, right? Just download my slides. They're in Dropbox. The slides I just presented and systematic reviews are in Dropbox. I also sent them to you earlier. So part 2, it's going to be quick through this part 2. It's about how to select a journal to publish in. As Snoopy says there, keep looking up. That's the secret of life. And I guess that's true of publishing. Be optimistic over pessimistic. We all get those rejection letters. We all get those issues. I have 2 papers I'll get to tomorrow that are this close from acceptance. They're provisional acceptance. One of my Duolingo papers and a paper I thought would never be accepted with a former student from another university. I was helping her with looking at online language learning through MOOCs, through massive open online courses. And it's taken several rounds of revisions, and we've gotten rejected 3 or 4 times, but finally the journal picked it up. If we make the changes, and it'll come out. And it was surprising. And so sometimes you just give it a go, and sometimes you have results when you didn't expect them, and sometimes you have non-results and rejections when you kind of were hoping, and it all kind of evens out. Never quite fully evens out. You have more you'll have more rejections than acceptances. That's just the name of the game. But you'll have to have some acceptances. So my Duolingo paper, that was another one we kind of struggled. And we top tier journal just called CALL, Computer Assisted Language Learning. So my student Shishi Lee is our first publication. I feel really good about that. It was a study that came out of a class project, and we expanded on it. So you never know. You never know what's going to happen out there. So it can be a class project. It can be a literature review from R711 or R690 or R795. It could be a literature review from your comprehensive exam. It could be a literature review from your dissertation. It could be a literature review from your first author study. It could be something that comes out of a conference paper. You just have to find that piece that kind of can find its way into a journal that accepts maybe literature reviews. And some journals do, like Tech Trends does. Not a lot of them. Not a lot of theoretical pieces or conceptual pieces could come from a grant proposal that was rejected, and you could write it into a paper. So class projects, my Duolingo paper was I'm second author. Shishi's Duolingo paper was a class project. It could be, a mix of things that you put different projects together. And so finding I think Hei-Jung would say her dossier 2 process would get her to reflect on what are her best pieces. Ji-Young Kim, who's not here tonight, she had many pieces in her dossier that she could pull from. She had many really short, but well-written pieces. It just expanded on them. Almost any of those were publishable, just picking the one that fits and expanding on it. Again, the target audience, who are you going to be your readers? Think about, the potential journal based on who you're talking to. Who are the readers? Who are your likely readers? Or who would you like to impress? Or how would you like to use the article? I often will publish an article in a journal because I know I want to use it in class. It might be an open access journal. And so I target journals based on how I'm going to use it. Or I know I'm going to share it with my colleagues somehow at some place. So I target journals based on that notion. That's one criteria anyhow. Who am I intending to help, support, show, and so forth? Is there a match between what you've done and the scope of the journal? So look at the table of contents of the most recent publications, and then go back a year. Look at last year's publication, or 2 years back. Take a look at how the journal's changed over time, what their scope is, what the word limit is, and think about your piece, and does it fit in that? Look at the editors, and are people in there, folks that you're citing in your reference list? Or is there anyone that you recognize in there? And then look at the turnaround time, although journals lie about turnaround time all the time. So, you can look at it, but I think the better source for acceptance rates and turnaround time, talk to your professors, talk to other people, and find out what their experience is. Say, how long did that article, that's a great article in ETR&D, Vanessa Denon, how long did it take to publish? Now Vanessa, you could write to her and ask her, right? You'll meet Dr. Hitchcock in a couple of weeks after spring break. You can ask him after that, you'll be able to ask these kinds of things, and that will save you lots of time. And nothing's perfect. Sometimes a journal is fast, like the Journal of Computing in Higher Education, JCHE. We had the editor of that journal last fall come in and talk about how she changed the journal and got it faster, turnaround times. So you getting to know the editors, look at turnaround and acceptance rates, and then think about top tier, second tier, third tier journals. We all aspire to get in the top tier journals. You know, that'd be great, but you can't get every paper in a top tier journal. You gotta suck it up a little bit and say, I'll go for, you know, second tier tech trends. I'll go for third tier something else, contemporary ed psych. You know, some things are practitioner journals. You know, if you'd like to get a set of guidelines out there like Mena Ju and I did on self-directed learning, well, we went to a journal where we could get that and publish those. I think there's a instructional design practitioner journal. I forget the exact name of it. The Journal of Instructional Design Practices or something like that. So what are the journals listing as the problems or the issues that they're focused on? What's the circulation of the journal? Are you going to get wide visibility, or there's some journals where I only get 2 people ever reading the article, and I'm saying to myself, were we really smart to publish in that particular journal? And then other ones I'm cited a whole bunch and I didn't expect it. So you really sometimes can't tell what the circulation is going to be. And some of it's dependent upon you posting it into your Facebook and Twitter and some other LinkedIn account, just letting people know that it's published. That's okay. That's kind of, you know, a viable thing to do. And sometimes you go for non-refereed journals. Not often. Early in your career, you shouldn't be focused on non-refereed. You should look for refereed journals. You should not. Yesterday, I was asked by 2 of my students, should we go for a book chapter? I said, no, try not to. I made a big mistake. I've got 65 or 70 book chapters. That's way too many. You know, I should have done more journal articles. I think I've got 150 some journal articles, more journal articles than book chapters. But still, you know, err towards journal articles early in the career if you want to get tenure. So these are some top tier journals: British Journal of Ed Tech, ETRD. Vanessa's the editor of Internet and Higher Ed. Instructional Science is even higher. That's a European journal. British Journal's a European as well. These are all top tier, and you get to the next tier of tech trends. We all like tech trends. It's gotten better over time, but it's still a second tier journal. It's not the premier place. Often your qualifying exams for EDD students come from articles in tech trends. They come from cases in tech trends, your critiques you're doing on articles in tech trends. Now, Educational Computing Research, Journal of Educational Computing Research, that is a quality journal. I maybe would disagree and say it's a tier 1 journal. When I started in the field, this was the best journal. And they actually expanded. It grew so much. They made 2 issues or made it the issues more often because it was such demand early in the field of instructional technology or online learning and so forth. Back again when I was in grad school, 3.5 decades ago or so, way back when in the Stone Age. And the same editor, his name is Robert Seidman from New Hampshire. He's still the editor of the journal. He's 194 years old, but he's still around. He's still young. He's looking young. He's a good guy, really good guy. Just talking about him the other day before my podcast show. I mean, so these journals, the editors tend to be there for a while. The one on the right here, Interactive Technology and Smart Education, is a new journal out of China, I believe. And it's a good one, but it's not a top tier journal. It doesn't become top tier until they establish themselves. So these are more third tier, or more newer kinds of journals, contemporary issues in teacher ed and technology and so forth. There are many. Off my homepage, I have a link to 100 journals. I can maybe show you at the end here. So subscribe to news feeds. You can find out about new publications and new trends in the field. Save the links. Save screenshots to be able to come back to those. Review what's published in the journals, and then share what you find and share what you published in Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook, and look for people's reactions. If a lot of people are saying, wow, Jiyoung, hey Jiyoung, that's a great article, or wow, Tina, what a good, if you're posting to Facebook and they're all going plus, you better be paying attention to that, because that's what you should be publishing on. What people are saying, smiling at and +1, +2, or whatever, write to people who are publishing or who interviewed in the articles, and then select a journal. Some journals are predatory journals. You don't want to be in predatory journals that publish anything. Even if Bonk writes it, we'll publish that, no problem. Yesterday, someone wrote me, I don't know, from some country like Madagascar or something. Send us a stuff. We like your last article published in XYZ. Publish it. We'll publish anything. Well, you better not go with a journal that says we'll publish anything from you. Just say no, thank you for asking, and so forth. But then look at the citation index of articles. Look at the citation index of articles published in that journal. Are they reviewed a lot? Are they published? Are they indexed a lot? Do people reference them? What's the impact factor? What's the ranking of the journal? Is it open access or not open access? Is it listed in the list of quality journals out there? So I said this one earlier. So again, be aware of fake journals, pseudo journals, sham journals, predatory journals. There are many. If they promise you to publish quickly, don't go with them. Fengru Xu is an alum of IST, and she's at Kent State now, and she created this slide and a couple others. I presented this with her at ACT a couple of years ago. If there's a subscription fee, I tend to shy away. If it's a small subscription fee and it's good quality journal, I might consider it, but most of these subscription fees are more than I can afford. And their main people, if you're in science and STEM, you can get your grant to pay for it, your university, but in education, we can't. So avoid that. Avoid those that promise fast review and fast publication. That's a dead-on sign that it's a predatory journal. Don't trust them. Don't trust them. If you get a lot what looks like a spam email, it's probably a spam email, just to get potential authors and hook you in and commit you. And if you're asked to edit a special issue for a journal you never heard about, they're hooking you in. They're trying to get you to do their work for them. And to get your name, they won't get my name on their journal, just avoid them. If they have a small editorial board, or that it's not clear who is the editorial board, don't go to that journal. It's a sign that it's not a good journal. If it's very new journal, they maybe have 2 issues previously out. Be suspect of that. So look at the newness, look at the size of the editorial board, look at inconsistencies between what's published and the scope that's listed. Sometimes they list the scope and then they accept anything, So all these are, I'm trying to give you some criteria, some guidelines. So I had this email come to me, warm greetings, Dr. Bonk. Your article about, MIT OpenCourseWare subscribers has been published in EdTech and Society. Well, that's a great journal. It's a great journal. They saw that and they wanted me to publish in their journal. They called Education Journal, which really doesn't, I don't think even exists. 50 to 70 days for paper to be published. Don't trust that at all. Open access. Period. Say thank you very much, goodbye. It happens all the time. You can track different listings. There's a checklist called thinkchecksubmit.org/check. So are your professors aware of the journal? Are your colleagues aware of that journal? Can you identify others that have published in the journal? Can you contact the publisher or editor? Do they send you an email back? Is there actually somebody there? Are they clear about what they're going to publish and what they don't publish? Are their articles, well indexed that you can access them rather quickly? I mean, you want your article indexed so people can find it, not just published, but have it be. You don't have to take 10 clicks to get to it, which is really bad. And it happens a lot. And again, do you recognize the editors? Is the publisher a recognized member of the industry? So there's 2 resources, one called the Directory of Open Access Journals that identifies legitimate, high quality, peer-reviewed journals. That's a good list, DOAJ.org. Then the bad list is Bell's list of predatory journals. Bell's list of predatory journals and publishers. That's getting longer and longer and longer because there are more and more predators out there, right? So, I'm trying to give you some early career advice that I wish I would have had. But these journals didn't really exist too often when I started off. So I didn't have to worry too much about this. But I had many other things that I did worry about. How do you get an article started? I've mentioned this before. You could have a blog or some diary that you might have, or notes that you've taken, thought notes or think sheets. Using social media is not a bad thing sometimes. Donald Clark, my guest last night, he publishes in Facebook all just reams of data. He visits Egypt and Greece. He writes all his historical content. He only writes a book in his Facebook posts. And he's done 3 books in the past 3 years. He's got a 4th one he's working on. It's all, social media gets him started. And he takes that and takes it into an article. Submit a grant proposal, submit a conference proposal, submit some kind of, like the IST conference this Friday, and hope you're going. I will be there. And I hope we can have a reflective drink or something after the IST conference, but who knows? So, submit to a conference and then take that and turn it into a paper potentially. Write editorials or opinion pieces or book reviews. Book reviews might be a way to get your thoughts, might be a way to get an early publication. Book reviews are easy. I'd really recommend doing a 1 or 2 book reviews in one's graduate career or after one graduates. Doing one is okay, and it's a publication. It'll make you feel good, and it's usually not more than 1,000 words. You're going to read books anyways. You might as well turn it into a publication. Now, I've done 5 maybe in my whole career, or 6 or 7, not that many, but 1 or 2 early on is okay. Take the plunge. Look for publishable possibilities. It includes writing a chapter. I said don't write book chapters. You can write a chapter if it's a way to get you started, and it's not going to get published anywhere else. And you have something written in that and it fits the book project. Well, you can do it for a book chapter. It's okay. It's not the ultimate goal. You can interview somebody like Donald Clark, my guest last night, or like Vanessa Denon, my guest today. Interview them. And initially you might post it in a blog, but you could turn it into an article. Some journals publish interviews. Tech Trends publishes interviews, so that's an easy way. Interviewing someone famous in the field and then getting that published. It's something on your resume, it's a Vita line item. It used to say in the United States, we had presidential veto power, a line item, a veto, not a line item veto, it's a line item Vita, a Vita line item. You want to get Vita line items. Volunteer for conference, be a discussant, be a chair of a session at a conference. You can get all these Vita line items just from doing a lot of simple things. Talk to me sometime. Talk to me in a cafe. I can give you 10 or 20 simple things you can do to get Vita line items. I used to be an accountant. Everything's a line item for an accountant. That's something that's relatively easy. So, and then write a practical article, newsletter article, book review. You don't want to do all these things. You don't want to do many of these things, but 1 or 2, it's okay. It's okay. It takes the plunge, and then a major grant. Take plunge part 2, a major grant proposal with your advisor or with your peers. I've often had students in IST that had more grant money than the entire IST department. We've had one of the keynotes this week, the second keynote, Sonny Kirkley, had more grant money than the entire School of Education when he was finishing his doctorate. He's really good at writing grants. His wife is in charge of training people to how to write grants. The 2 of them are a grant writing machine. Come to his talk, 4 o'clock. I'm going to introduce him. Come to the 8:45, Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas is a Renaissance man. We have 2 great keynotes at the IST conference. Sonny Kirkley's a futurist. Michael Thomas is a Renaissance man. I ran the Chicago Marathon with him 20 years ago. He's a very interesting person. University of Illinois, Chicago. Looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion things. Lead a special journal issue maybe later in your career, not right away. Edit a book, maybe later in your career, not right away. I edited a book in 1998, and it was that book editing. All education people in the School of Ed were authors. That book got me known. Single author a book, that can get you known. Get your name out there somewhere and somehow. So I'm going to stop there and see if anyone has any comments or any takeaways of what you can do, what you could do in terms of writing and taking the plunge.
We have 2 questions on the chat.
Yeah.
So from Paula. The first one, can one publish their literature review before the dissertation, or would that be self-plagiarism?
You can publish it. Yes.
Yeah, I know that, but
Yeah, no, you can publish it, and it's not to worry because it's going to take so long anyways. You'll be defending your dissertation before it gets published. I have that concern when I go to a conference and I submit a proposal and I try and publish it at the same time, and often it happens where it's published before the conference because the conference is like 9 months from now. And so is that plagiarism or not? Well, if it's in your proposal, it wasn't published when you submitted, it's not plagiarism, and the same is true of your dissertation. The other question was?
the other one is what happens in the title of the journal increases after you publish there. Does this improve your acceptance by associate or management?
Read the first part of that.
What happens if the tier of the journal?
Oh, the tier of the journal. So we're
Yeah.
having that issue with the journal published tomorrow. Our online learning journal is not SSCI, but they're trying to be, and they've been trying for a while, and it probably will become SSCI. So I have a feeling that it's going to move up in status. So I am going to experience that. It won't affect my reputation too much, but I've been publishing in that quite a bit lately in that journal. So, and I'm on the board of that journal. And I might go to the conference related to that in the fall. So when when it moves up in status, that's a good thing. Even if it doesn't directly impact your career, it can indirectly impact it, and also can impact the future next generation. But if you haven't gotten tenure and you published in a journal and it's become SSCI before getting tenure, I think that would help you in the tenure process. Okay, so the journal moves up in rankings because they will look at whether it's SSCI at the moment in which you get tenure. They won't really often reflect back and say, oh, that really wasn't a SSCI back in the day. It only became no one really thinks along those lines. If it is SSCI, when you go up for tenure, you can flag it as SSCI. And I don't think anyone would call into question that. And, these things happen. There are several journals where that happens, and it's not a quick process, but I think all ed tech journals got a lot of citations in 2020 and 2021 because of the pandemic, and the rankings changed. They all grew in status from 2019 to 2021. If you had a rankings of journals and you looked at it in 2019 and you looked at it in 2021 or 22, you would see a great change, a gigantic change in many journals. I'm on the editorial board of Distance Ed, which really bumped up. The Internet and Higher Ed, all these journals jumped up. So our field is being impacted in a positive way because of the pandemic, but not across the board. Any other last comments? Was that helpful, the thing about predatory journals and publishing and all that? Tina?
Yes, that was very helpful.
Paula?
Yep, it was, certainly.
So I will end week 8 and I will stop the recording in a second and say, I hope you can be successful in your publishing career as a result of some of these tips, as well as other tips you'll get from other people. There are many guidelines that I've distilled from the literature that I've put into this 10-part kind of talk or workshop, and that was part 2. So we've done part 1, part 2, part 9, and part 10. Now we're going to go in the middle, look at parts 3 to 8, and I might go to numbers 7 and 8, I think, and come back to 3 because Mina Ju is going to join us in a couple of weeks. We'll get to part 3. We'll look at junior career starting off, and she'll talk about an early career successes that she had. And next week, again, we will try and meet face to face. I will contact all you and Merve Bazdagan and I think I'm going to do a presentation on 20 former PhD students. I'm going to do cases the problems, short, very short, somewhat humorous talk about the problems that you might face in a dissertation and how you might overcome those dilemmas, issues, problems, and kind of funny stories behind about 20 of my former students that I think you'll find enjoyable. So Merve will present on literature reviews and research questions, and I'll present cases on dissertating next week. So that's my challenge to myself.